The Historical Society officially began on January 12th, 2012. So about 12 years, 2 years off for COVID. And it started in the Jefferson Room. Since then, there have been over 80 programs and special activities. In 2012, we had 2 featured speakers, Richard Guy Wilson and Ed Lay. Wow. And Ed Lay is here tonight. And Ed and Richard Guy Wilson have been terrific mentors for the Historical Society. If it wasn't for their support and other support, such as Jody, we wouldn't be where we are. Richard and Ed have together probably given over a dozen programs to the Society and field trips, taking us to special places. Tonight, Richard will share with us the behind-the-scenes details about the development of the Farmington subdivision. For those of you that don't know Professor Wilson, he is the Commonwealth Professor Emeritus of Architectural History at the University of Virginia. He's a frequent lecturer, TV commentator, and curator of exhibitions, and he has published widely with many articles and books on various aspects of American and modern architecture. It's kind of surprising, since we think of him more as a Palladian person, that he does modern, but a little known secret about Richard, the house he grew up in was modern. So he has given lectures and tours all over the world as an architectural historian. His contributions to the Historical Society include, but are limited to, 6 program presentations, 3 field trips, and Richard was the guiding force in 2017 for the Historical Society's Farmington House Tour. And that is what kicked off the donations to restore the ice house. He has also mentored 4 graduate student interns that he has sent to the Society, all of whom have gone on to careers in historic preservation. It is a pleasure to introduce to you Richard Guy Wilson.
Well, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, well, that was very nice, and I appreciate it. And are we going to keep the lights like this, or you tell me what's best for you here? Okay, well, anyway, well, maybe a little up a hair. Okay, anyway. But I'm very honored to be here and to be speaking about this. And let me just say that certainly in the background of my talk, there are a lot of different people who contributed to it over the years, ideas and so forth. And I really can't name all of them, but I just want to acknowledge that I'm drawing on the work of many other people. As the title suggests, I am going to focus on the suburban portion of Farmington and not on the house. There are many stories that can be told here, and the house where we are is very, very important. But there's another side to this that I think is very important, and that we need to pay attention to, and that is the landscape and how it was created. And it is a designed landscape. Yes, there is nature that is here, and nature plays a very important role. And we might say that my major theme is nature in this. But still, at the same time, what we're talking about is a very created view of the way that we see things, what we see, how it is, how it is laid out. And so that is, as I say, that's just sort of an underlying theme here that I really want you to keep in mind. Now, at the end, yeah, okay, I'm an architectural historian, so I'm going to come back to some houses and so forth very, very briefly at the end, but that's really not what the major theme is. The houses are here. They're part of the landscape, but what I'm more interested in is the bigger story of exactly how they are placed in nature and how it works. And so the plan this is the plan. I think some of you've seen over there. They have up a couple of different a couple of things. But this is the plan that was created by Mr. Draper in 1920. We actually got the commission in 1927, but it was 28, 29. And it is it's not the very first garden suburb in this country, and I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. But it is a very important example of the Americans' quest for nature. And it is nature that can make us. It is nature that is one of the fundamental elements here. And so, in case you can't understand it, this is where we came in right here. And in this plan, they did have a railroad station down there, which I'd say, thank goodness, never got built, and so forth. But this does show is that the idea behind this here was that this was going to be a suburban development, and they were going to sell the lots, and 16 individuals are going to make a lot of money. I mean, and that's something to keep in mind. This is America, after all, right? And what is it that we worship? Well, okay, enough of that. But in any event, what you do have is that this is where we come in. Here is the country club, the old house. It's over here. But what is very interesting is the way that the roads are laid out here, following the contours, and then it is worked in with this the golf course. And of course, all of these are lots and so forth. Not all of them are built on, but the whole idea that this would be really a very much a garden suburb. Now, the background to this goes back to this right here, Llewellyn Park, New Jersey. Has anybody ever been to Llewellyn Park, New Jersey? There's 1, 2, 3, okay. Llewellyn Park, New Jersey is really the first garden suburb created in the Western world. It is copied, and we are one of the heirs for it here, and you do find the thing over in Europe, but it is an American invention. An American invention, this idea of creating a suburb that is in nature, that does this. And so this is the first one here, and it's located in West Orange, New Jersey. It's about 12 miles from Lower Manhattan, and was extremely well known at the time when it was done. The architect of it, or the designer of it, was a man by the name of Alexander Jackson Davis, who was a very key figure in American architecture, and he did do this landscape design in the years leading up to the Civil War. And also involved in this Llewellyn Haskell. He's the guy that owned this. It was about 350 acres, something like that. And the whole idea of this is that he was going to develop this place here where people could escape from New York and come out and live, and that you didn't have to have that damn Manhattan that is around you all the time. And so anyway, this is the entrance to it here, as you can see. And this going up through the center, no, this isn't a golf course there. What it is that this is a river or a stream and so forth that runs down and becomes this sort of the ramble. And then as you can see, you have the roads that lead off to this, and you have different lots that are put aside where different houses are going to be built and so forth. It was a gated community, and there was a gate down here. And if you do look this up sometimes on the damn internet, you will find that they say the only thing that's important for us is the first gated community. Well, they don't understand that this is the very first place where they're laying out the thing with people that live in nature, you see, and that they're trying to, and that they're trying to follow that. So here are a couple of views, and I should have made a little personal statement that I'm an academic. My very first published article was on Llewellyn Park, New Jersey, published back in 1977 of all damn times, and anyway, so I've never gotten rid of the damn thing. But here are a couple of views, as you can see, and the house on the right. This is a typical sort of 1850s board and batten type of thing, the A.J. Davis design. But what is also important, of course, is the way that it's set back and the way that you have this lawn that's leading up to it. That's not right up to the road or anything like that. Of course, there's planting of a lot of trees and so forth. But then the open space that are throughout it, the sort of the park-like atmosphere, and the way that nature's brought in. Now, a little bit of a background on Llewellyn Park, New Jersey. As I said a minute ago, it was Alexander Jackson Davis who designed it. This is the man who should have designed it, but he died in 1852. And this is Andrew Jackson Downing. And you know, you're gonna get very confused. Or A.J. Davis, A.J. Downing, blah, back and forth. They were actually buddies. So they were buddies and they worked together and so forth. What Downing is very, very important for is that he published at least 4 books on American architecture and landscape. And one of the most important books, as I have up here, as you can see, is a treatise on the theory and the practice of landscape gardening adapted to North America. And then if you read the rest of the title up there, you can see if the improvement of country residences, down below a little bit more with remarks on rural architecture. This is published in 1841. And the book was pretty popular at the time with a certain group of people and so forth. Not everybody, because not everybody could read. But at the same time, this is the type of illustration that you'd have in there, and this is the way that he was suggesting that you ought to live. Now, as I say, he died in 1852. And Llewellyn Park is a couple of years later. And of course, there's been a speculation by many of us, if he'd been alive, he would have been the designer of it. But he died at the age of 30. Died at the age of 37. Some of his other work that he did, and that some of you may know, to put this in here, this is the way that you should lay out. And he suggests there's different ways of handling nature. One is that it's a sort of an organized scheme, which is the beautiful, but then there is grouping to produce the picturesque. And it's in these years that the term picturesque was invented in England in the late 19th century, but really comes over here and becomes a way of composition. That instead of doing the standard sort of bump, 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 that you group things together, that you are trying to make it look like it is nature that is there. In other words, it is the picturesque, or another way of saying it is it's the naturalesque. In one of his books, several of his books, I'm just going to show you the place right here. This is Cottage Residences, published in 1842. And what is interesting, this is the way you should lay out your house. Now, this isn't for a subdivision. Subdivisions haven't been invented yet in that sense. But you notice the way that this is handled here. Here's the main road that's down here. You come in like this, you curve around, look at your tree and so forth, curve around. Well, finally you can find the house back here or here. Now, there's gardens and so forth. For your orchard over here, your gardens, orchard there and so forth. But it is very interesting the way that he is conceiving this, that this is the way that people ought to live, that you ought to live with nature and that you ought to have this naturalesque or this picturesque type of element. Now, where do these ideas come from? Well, of course, England, damn it all. I mean, after all, we have to keep in mind that in these years we were still very much the heirs of England. What did we have that was here? I mean, we were basically English, though we didn't want to have that damn king or that queen or so forth, but still, other than that. But it is people like this. This is Capability Brown. He was a very, very important English landscape designer. The term landscape architect had not yet been invented in those years. But these are private residences. This isn't a park or anything like that. These are private residences, but you are living virtually in a park, as you can see. This one here is a much smaller, sort of a layout here. This is a much bigger sort of a scheme that is over here. But what he does is that he really brings to the public this whole idea of the way that you can design in the picturesque or the naturalesque, that nature can be part of it. In other words, none of this, no way. That this is all gone. This is, we are out of this sort of stuff. We're not going to do this type of thing anymore. And it's just to note that it does also, there is the English side of this, such as Regent's Park over here on the left, and over in Paris, there are some of the same ideas that are going on over there with some of the Parisian designers. And if you know, we are very much indebted. We always look to England for what the hell is going on. But still, at the same time, there is Paris over there. There is France. And Paris is becoming the world center of art, and this is where Americans can go. So on these two designs here, just very briefly, as you can see, there are formal elements that are sort of here, but then in contrast, you have this. Here's the Regent's Park, or this is Père Lachaise in Paris. You do have this, but then notice all of this over here, and so it's this sort of a contrast that's set up. Very important for the Americans was Mr. J.C. Loudon. And Loudon was an English, what we call today, landscape architect, who published a number of different books, and I'm just going to show you a couple of them, or just one here, really. But this is picked up by Americans, by wealthy Americans, Americans that have some sort of interest in this. And this is the way that these ideas, there are some people that go over to England and do see it, but basically it floats across the big pond through illustrations and so forth in the books and the writings and all of this. And so he suggests that this is the way that you might want to live and so forth, as you can see here with this house, which is, you've got this big yard that is behind it there, the trees, the way that they're arranged in this very picturesque sort of environment, and that's the way that you might walk out. And so this is where Mr. Downing and Mr. Davis for Llewellyn Park, this is where they're getting their ideas, is they're getting them out of these different English, books and so forth, and it's picking up here. And so Downing has here, an example of the picturesque and landscape gardening on the left, or the grouping, how it is that you produce this. So that's one part. But I can't give a talk without mentioning who. But it is interesting, what I'm bringing him in here is for a minute, is that if you do know Mr. Jefferson, one of the things that he frequently talks about is the uniqueness of America is nature. That is what we have here. That is nature that makes us so different than those old blokes that are over there across the pond and so forth. That's what it is. And I don't have to go into giving quotes and so forth. But of course, the work that he does do up at Monticello, there's a plan down there. Of course, the way that he talks about this is the most sublime of all nature's creations. And so what I'm shifting the focus here just slightly, but moving towards what I think is the central element in this, is nature. Nature for Americans, because that's what it is. And of course what we do have, and what did America have as far as art in the early 19th century, the first half of the 19th century? It was nature. There was these people such as Frederick Church, Thomas Cole, who were going out into nature and painting these wild, wonderful sorts of scenes, such as we have here. Or, much more intimate types of paintings, such as we have here. And it continues on even after the Civil War. George Ennis, a very, very, very important figure. I mean, Cole and Church are some of the central figures, but George Ennis is really, really important. But it isn't just necessarily the big, wild stuff. It is the intimacy of nature, and it is what it is that makes it, and what it is that it makes it, and makes its impact on us. Now, there is a lot written on this, and as I said, I'm an academic, and so you have to put up with this. Who's probably the most important American writer prior to the Civil War, who really influences American culture in every sort of way? What's the title of his damn book there? Do I need to quote? The advantage which the country life possesses for a powerful mind over the artificial and curtailed life of cities. We know more from nature than we can at will communicate. Its life flows into the mind evermore. And there's many, 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 many more of these that I could go on about Emerson. Or dum-da-dum-da-dum-da-dum. I won't quote here. But I think my point is that there is a tremendous American, and there's a lot of books that have been written on this and so forth. I won't go into the different titles. But a lot of books have been written about the identification of Americans with nature in these years, that this was our identity. Because we didn't have any damn past. Well, now, okay. Some of you know that I have talked endlessly about the colonial revival and all of this other sorts of crap and that type of thing. And Jefferson trying to create an American identity with his architecture. But still, it is really nature that is the thing that is a much more important thing that's going on in these years, and really is really very much, as they say, it's very much this American identity. And so there is the placement. Well, of course, Manhattan hadn't grown all the way up the island, but still this creation of these, not just an open space, you know, but this creation of parks in American cities is really a very American type of an endeavor here. And of course, here we are. We're at Central Park, designed by Frederick Olmsted, Calvert Vaux, and Frederick Withers. They were a partnership and so forth. I'm just showing you one picture, but of course the contrast that one gets today. But at the time, I mean, this was just a big, big, big deal. And I won't go through all of these damn parks and so forth, but just to point out how important it is. And so this, what is that jumping around? I guess it's a bug. Moth. See, we have nature in here too. What I'm coming back to is that this is where the idea of this garden suburb comes out of, is this American quest for nature, that it's us. And so then Mr. Davis and Mr. Haskell really get together and create this first of this garden suburbs. And the way it was promoted, and I should say that lots were for sale. I mean, Haskell wanted to make some money here and so forth. But so at the same time, it was that you can live with nature, that this was this would be part of it. So these are some early views. It was a gated community, as you can see there on the left. And there was the big ramble that ran up through the center there. This right here, and that right there, the bridge, that is where we're taking a look at right there. But this does catch on to the American imagination, at least to some people. And so you begin to get a variety of different garden suburbs who are created across the country. And Frederick Olmsted, with his partner Calvert Vaux, Central Park and so forth. But in 1869, a little bit west of Chicago, they create, there's a developer that's behind this, has created Riverside, Illinois. There's train tracks that run right through it. like you can see right there, chug, 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 like this. But the river that curves around like this, the way that it's laid out and so forth, and these curving types of lines and so forth. This is Welland Park. The garden suburb begins to catch on, and it's just not and you can see it. You can see it other places. And here, just a picture I took a couple of years ago, but the way that it was supposed to be, the way it was supposed to be at the time. And here, there's the road that runs through it. This is Long Common. That's the way that the thing was being sold there on the left with your horse and buggy, but you can see this divided road. And this is the way that this is the way it looks together. So this idea of the garden suburb, of living in nature in a garden suburb, really begins to catch on, and there are lots of them. Now, one example that isn't really very damn good at all is Garden City, Long Island, because this is picked up by a developer, and that I'm going to attract people to come out and work for me. This is Doubleday and Company, the publishing house, and some other manufacturers, and it's basically a gridiron, as you can see, with the trains running through it, but it is planted and so forth, and he takes up the name Garden City. Well, this isn't a very good example of the Garden City. No, this is not, this isn't it. Also, as a sort of a footnote to this, the idea floats over the big pond, over there to England, and is picked up by a couple of Englishmen. And Mr. Ebenezer Howard, he was a disciple of William Morris. William Morris is the arts and crafts, or the founder of the arts and crafts movement. This was a community here that was going to be manufacturing and so forth, and all of this, as you can see. But there's a book that is published there, Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path to Real Reform. And this is the type of a garden city that he's talking about. And this is just a sort of this isn't really a plan or anything like that. But the whole idea that this would happen. And there are a couple of English communities that are done. This is probably one of the very best known ones here. This is Letchworth, as you can see, the first garden city in England. And there is the plan of it over here on this side. And you can see it is a much more regularized type of a scheme. There's a lot of trees and all of this, but it's a much more regularized type of scheme. It isn't quite the informal type of quality that it is that catches on and becomes the big thing over here. The idea is picked up in this country, and don't worry, I'm not going to show you every damn one. There is at least 300 that are done up to World War I, that are done of what we might say are garden cities and so forth. And I'm not going to show you all of them. I'm just going to show you one or two. This is one here. This is Tuxedo Park. This is north of New York City. And it was more of a resort type of a place, but was extremely popular. Pierre Lorillard and Company, so forth, was a person here. But as you can see here, what you have is there's a clubhouse here, there's a pond, there's a lake, but the way that the houses are laid out and just sort of, scattered around and so forth, pushed out onto a point, point here and there. Or another one here, and this is also in New York. But this is in Queens, as you can see on Long Island. And this is Frederick Olmsted's son and his nephew becomes the firm after Frederick Olmsted passes away in 1897. They take over, and it becomes Olmsted, and they do a tremendous amount of work that's around. But this is an interesting example here of Forest Hills Gardens, where once again, and what it is here is just, of course, this dark area is it, and so forth. But here's the choo-choo train coming in through like this, and there is this grid, but then over the grid, they cut the thing up and so forth to create this informal sort of a layout, and you do get these views like this, and it's a wonderful place to go see. Now, shifting gears just slightly, there is another part of nature, the golf course. The golf course. The golf was apparently invented in Scotland in the 1870s, 1880s. There's a lot of mix-up about dates and so forth on this, and exactly how many holes there were and all of this sort of stuff. But it is invented in Scotland, and then it comes over to the United States. In the 1880s, there is a tremendous amount of squabbling over who is the first American golf course, because some of them were 6-hole, some of them were 9-hole. Then the first 18-hole probably is in Brookline, Massachusetts. We're showing there at the Brookline Country Club, about 1882, is maybe one of the very first of the American full 18-hole types of golf courses. And it spreads across the country, and of course there's one that's down here in Virginia, dating 1892. This is one of the very first ones here, an 18-hole that was that's here. But then what is very interesting from our point of view is this, that, and again there's some squabbling on this, the exact dates and so forth, but this is apparently is the very first one. This Fisher's Island Golf Club, located out in Long Island, and it's by the Olmsted boys here. This is the very first where there is both the golf club and a housing development that's connected with it. That it is not just a separate unit, but it's connected to, but it's connected to this. And as I say, these are the sons of Frederick Law Olmsted, and you can pick out a little bit here. You can see the golf course, but then you can see some houses that are scattered off, over there, and so forth. And then another one, and then there's a couple of these, but this one right here, this is Massachusetts, and this is again is the Olmsted boys working here. But once again, this is the sort of the golf club is down here. You can see the links that go out. But then there are the houses and so forth. There are the links and so forth. But then there are houses and so forth that are out like this and around and so forth. And this whole idea of that you can bring together the sport of golf and living in nature and make it into one whole thing. And so that's where this happens here at Farmington, and this is where we fit into this picture, because we are not the first. There's a little bit of, again, squabbling on this. We are probably the 7th one of the integration. Now, I know that some people here are going to be raising their hands saying, no, we're 5th, we're 3rd, whatever. But anyway, and again, this is, boy, a lot of counting and so forth. But in 1927, a group of 16 individuals purchased this land here. It was John Graves, who served as president, Dr. Stephen Watts, H.A. George, Donald Stevens, R.T. Minor Jr. These are all the officers of the first club, all the officers of the first club. And the idea was, and I've already pointed this out before, the railroad station down there, that this was a real estate development. We're going to make some dough out of this thing, and so forth. At the same time, of course, the whole idea is that you can have your sport. At the same time, you can live in nature. That it's a totally new type of way of living. The individuals that are connected in the design here is first Mr. Earl Sumner Draper. He is the basic guy that does all of the layout for this, and he worked down in basically in North Carolina. Did many developments, suburban types of developments scattered throughout the South, some in cities, others outside the city, and so forth. But he's the one who does the overall layout. And this is one of his developments he worked on there. As you can see, of course, they like these nature names and so forth. You've got damn forest everywhere you go, and so forth. So he is that. And then the other person who is very interesting is Mr. F.A. McPherson Finley, who is the designer of the golf course. Finley, just to note, had been born in Scotland. The home is golf. He became an avid golfer and so forth. He traveled around considerably, actually went off to Australia and designed some golf courses down there, but finally gets to the United States in 1921, and he does over 100 golf courses worldwide, and there are 36 of his golf courses that are located here in Virginia alone. Such as in Waynesboro, Richmond, or 2 in Richmond, Roanoke, 2, Stanton, he designs. And it is worthwhile to note that he also lives here after this is developed. He lives here at Farmington in the house right behind, or the garage that's right behind the stone house, that's next to the left. That's where he lived, and actually that's where he died. And that his son-in-law was the manager of Farmington for about 20 odd years, or something like that. So there is this sort of very interesting, personal type of connection. Now, I called up Mr. Draper and Mr. Finley the other day, and I said, can I talk to you about how did you work together? Because this had to be a collaboration. It is, the whole idea of working this thing out on this 700 odd acres that is here and fitting in the golf course on this with the subdivision and so forth that goes around this. But unfortunately, they didn't answer the phone, so I couldn't get this. But it's got to be very much a collaboration. So while Draper puts his name on this right there, as landscape architect and so forth, in Charleston, North Carolina, Finley is very much involved. And as I say, it leads to the whole issue here of the way that this is laid out. That you have these views and so forth, and the contrasts that are constantly being made between the roads, some that are closed in, others where you get this tremendous view that looks out, and you can see in some cases the Blue Ridge Mountains off there, and this. The way that the houses are set back. They're not right up close to the road in most cases. They're set back. Now you can see some of the houses, and I can stop and take pictures of them and so forth, but the architecture isn't the thing. It is nature. It's nature that is the thing, and this is how it is that you're going to live. And so it is, for me, as an architectural historian, my God, it's not the architecture. It's the landscape. It's the trees. It's nature that is the major thing. And I think that is one of the things I say that goes back to the law and part of New Jersey that we created in this country, was a method of thinking about how it is that you live, that it is this nature that is part of us, and that is, and that's part of it. And there is this, I think it's over there, yeah, it's over there right next to the bar, but this shows in 1930 how the development was taking place, and that you're getting some houses some houses that are being built and so forth. Here's the country club that's down here. Others have been sold. Others are in development and so forth. And then there's other areas that they're still working on and trying to figure out exactly what happens. But you can see, of course, here is the golf courses that are running through and all of this. The architecture here is diverse. And I don't know every damn house, and I haven't taken a picture of every damn house. I'm sorry if your house is not in here, or if you're upset that your house is in here. But it is interesting, the diversity. And I have to admit that this is one of the things that I think that the Historical Society really ought to do, is try to do a list of all of the architects that are involved here, because we do have, much more modern sorts of things. It gets much more traditional, much more traditional. And I think that that's another thing that's very important, is the diversity that you have. Now, just very, very briefly, I know we're coming to the end here, but I just want to mention a couple of the architects who worked here, because they are important, and I'm just going to show you a couple of these, but one of these is Mr. Marshall Wells. And Marshall Wells, he's the man who does a lot of the remodeling of the country club here, and he was one of the very first architecture students to graduate from the University of Virginia. We started our architecture school in 1919 at the University of Virginia. Fisk Kimball was the original head of the school, or the department, or whatever you want to call it, of architecture. And Marshall Wells is one of the very first ones. He does move around a little bit, but basically stays here. This is a drawing. His papers are in special collections at the University of Virginia. And this is a drawing that I saw there for the clubhouse here. And as you can see, we are back in here, but this is the front room here, the Jefferson room. Here's the original clubhouse. Here's the wings that stretch out like this. And this is some of the stuff this is some of the things that he projects that goes on. And so I say he's a very important figure, and also, I mean, it is details. Architecture is in the details too, and it's really worthwhile to take a look at these. This is his own house that was here, and he passed away. He lived here in Farmington. He passed away, and it's a rather interesting plan. I know it's a little difficult to see. But basically this is the entrance, but you have these wings. It's sort of this curvilinear plan where you pull into the front place here. But the way that he has these series of very odd shaped rooms. I mean, he has classes in one level, but in the other level, look at this. He's got this octagon shaped room here, a square room, a rectangular room here, a square room back here. This is the original garage that's over here. He's a very interesting figure. There's been some research that's done on him, I should make a note to Carolyn Fraser did a book on him, because he also did some work down in did considerable amount of work down in Lynchburg. So I'm trying to get my notes together here. Here's one more of his. This is very interesting, I find it, because this is rubble stone that's on the exterior. Most of the houses are brick, and this is rubble stone that's used here. And it's a very, 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 very interesting house. Oops. Oh. Yeah, and here's one more of his. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you every damn one. Another person is Stanhope Johnson, and Stanhope Johnson is a very critical figure here in Virginia architecture, and especially here in Charlottesville. Does lots of stuff around. Very much influenced by Jefferson, as you can see. Oak Forest, certainly takes off on Jefferson. And Poplar Forest, and Poplar Forest in many ways. Here is another one of his, much more formal, by Gallison Hall. And then Uncle Milton Grigg. And Milton Grigg was also one of the earliest graduates of the School of Architecture at the University of Virginia. He worked initially down at Colonial Williamsburg on the restoration down there. He did a lot of work up in Monticello and other things that are around town. But he is also was a very, very important architect in his own right, and there are just countless buildings of his that are scattered all over town, and not just out here, but all over town, including City Hall. And here is just one more of his buildings that shows some of some of the diversity. But back to nature. And the whole point of this is that what do we have here? But we do have some wonderful architecture, and it's very, very important to have this. But still, at the same time, what it is the layout. It is that subdivision layout that Mr. Draper and Finley worked together on that created that is really one of the unique elements. And so we can go look at the architecture, but we need to drive around and to take a look. And what you will see is, thank you.